A millionaire sees a homeless girl wearing his childhood love's necklace, and the world around him stops. The necklace is old, a small silver pendant he hasn't seen in decades, resting against the chest of someone who looks like she's been fighting for survival on the streets of Manhattan. He shouldn't care. He shouldn't stare. But he can't move. She notices him watching, gripping the pendant as if expecting trouble. He takes a step toward her, confusion rising, questions forming, and then she turns away, disappearing into the crowds before he can speak. Riley Quinn had learned long ago that survival in New York City wasn't about strength. It was about holding on to one meaningful reason to stay standing. For her, that reason hung from a thin, frayed chain around her neck. The necklace was the only thing she kept when everything else slipped away. Her apartment, her part-time job at the grocery store, even the few friends who promised to check on her but slowly vanished. Riley grew up in a working-class neighborhood in Buffalo, raised by a mother who stitched together hope the way others stitched fabric. Her mother cleaned offices by night and took community college classes by day, always repeating the same phrase when Riley felt overwhelmed. "We hold our ground, even when nobody sees us." It became more than advice. It became Riley's anchor. But anchors can't stop every storm. When her mother passed unexpectedly, ills stacked faster than she could handle. Her hours were cut, rent increased, and one winter morning, she found herself standing outside with 2 bags and nowhere to go. She boarded a bus to Manhattan, believing she could find work, a chance, a fresh start. What she found instead were shelter waiting lists, crowds that walked past as if she didn't exist, and a city where people judged her by the dirt on her jeans rather than the resolve in her heart. Still, Riley refused to collapse. She washed up in public bathrooms, lined up early for day shelters, and spent afternoons in the library, where heat was free and silence didn't cost anything. On good days, she earned a few dollars collecting bottles or doing small tasks for street vendors. On bad days, she reminded herself of her mother's creed. We hold our ground, even if the ground was cold concrete, even if nobody saw her. The necklace, a small silver pendant shaped like a leaf, had belonged to her mother, though she never explained its origin. Riley only knew it mattered deeply, and wearing it made her feel less invisible, like a memory resting against her skin. She didn't know that someone else once loved a pendant just like it. She didn't know that someone with power, wealth, and a life completely opposite hers would stop breathing the moment he recognized it. On a chilly Thursday morning, Riley stood outside the Midtown Workforce Center, clutching a paper ticket with her number on it. It wasn't a job yet, just an interview for a city-run transitional work program. But it was the closest thing to hope she'd had in months. If she got in, she could earn a few steady hours each week, enough to afford a rented room in a shared basement, or maybe even a prepaid phone. She had exactly $6.25 in her pocket, enough for a cheap sandwich after the interview. Nothing more. Losing that program meant going back to the shelters, back to uncertainty, back to nights where she slept with one eye open to keep her few belongings safe. Riley straightened her jacket, smoothed her hair with cold hands, and repeated her mother's creed under her breath. We hold our ground. This interview wasn't just an opportunity. It was a lifeline, and she knew one misstep, one bad impression, one moment of someone deciding she didn't belong could take it all away. Still, she walked inside. Still, she held on to hope. She had no idea how quickly someone else's world would collide with hers, shattering the day she had so carefully pinned her hopes on. The lobby of the Workforce Center was busy but orderly, a mix of anxious faces and quiet determination. Riley took a seat near the wall, keeping her backpack close. Her number, B47, glowed on the digital board. Just a few more turns, just a few more minutes of pretending she wasn't terrified. A staff member stepped out from one of the offices, clipboard in hand, calling the next applicant. Riley sat up straighter, smoothing the pendant beneath her shirt. She rehearsed her answers in her head. Reliable, willing to learn, punctual. She could do this. She was ready. That was when a voice behind her rose sharply. "Hey, watch it." Riley turned just as a young woman in stylish business clothes stumbled back dramatically, sending her coffee tumbling to the floor. The woman pointed at Riley as if she'd been shoved, though Riley hadn't even moved. "She bumped into me," the woman said loudly, eyes sweeping the room. "And she tried to grab my bag. I felt it." The room stilled, heads turned. Riley froze, confusion flooding her. "What? I didn't touch." But it didn't matter. The accusation had already rooted itself. Two security guards hurried over, glancing instantly at Riley's worn clothes, her backpack, her unwashed hair. Their assumptions were swift, practiced. "Step over here, ma'am," one guard said. "Not a request, an order." Riley lifted her palms. "I swear I didn't." The businesswoman cut her off, voice trembling with false indignation. "My wallet's missing. She must have taken it." Riley's stomach dropped. She hadn't stolen anything. She hadn't even stood up. But the guards didn't ask questions. They went straight for her bag. "Please," Riley whispered. "It's just my things." They emptied her backpack onto the floor in front of everyone. Her spare socks, cheap toothbrush, folded shelter pamphlet, and a tiny plastic bag with her remaining $6.25. Someone snickered. Someone whispered, "Figures." No wallet appeared, because there was no wallet to find. The businesswoman checked her purse again, blinked in sudden embarrassment, and muttered, "Oh, it's here." No apology, no retraction, just quiet dismissal, as if her lie hadn't just crushed someone's dignity. But the damage was done. The supervisor stepped out, frown deepening. "We can't proceed with your interview today. Please come back when things are resolved." Resolved, as if clearing her name was a simple errand. Riley knelt on the floor, gathering her scattered belongings, cheeks burning. Her chance, her one fragile hope, was slipping away, and she couldn't stop it. Above her, beyond the lobby's glass doors, someone wealthy and familiar had witnessed every second without her noticing. Elias Mercer hadn't planned to be anywhere near the workforce center that day. His driver had taken a wrong turn, and Elias, tired of boardroom debates and the insulated calm of chauffeured rides, asked to walk the last few blocks to his meeting. He needed air, space, something real after a morning spent navigating investors who spoke in numbers but cared about nothing human. He paused outside the center, checking a message on his phone, when raised voices from inside pulled his attention. He glanced through the glass doors almost absently, until his eyes landed on the worn silver pendant glinting against a young woman's chest. The pendant, the exact pendant, a small silver leaf with the same tiny dent on the right edge. His breath hitched. It couldn't be. When he was 10, he had given a necklace just like that to Mara Caldwell, his childhood friend, the girl who lived down the block, whose laughter stayed with him long after her family moved away. He remembered the goodbye, the promise to write, and the ache of losing the only person who understood him before wealth rewrote his world. He had never seen another necklace like it. Now it hung around the neck of a girl who looked exhausted, alone, and painfully out of place. Elias stepped closer to the door, watching as a businesswoman accused her of theft. He saw the guards descend without hesitation, saw Riley's confusion, her fear, and the humiliation of having her few belongings dumped out like trash. He felt something tighten in his chest. The scene was unfair, obvious, almost rehearsed. The wealthy treated as believable, the homeless treated as guilty. He had seen that imbalance 1,000 times in his world, but this time he felt it differently. Then he saw the small bag of coins, $6.25, still across the floor. $6 and change. That was all she had. He watched the businesswoman find her wallet and walk away unbothered. He watched Riley crouch, gathering her life back into her shaking hands. Across the glass, no one helped her. No one defended her. No one even looked at her with anything but suspicion or discomfort. Except him. Elias found himself stepping forward without thinking, hand on the door, pulse strangely unsteady. Something about that necklace, about her quiet shame, about the injustice unfolding. It pulled at memories he thought he buried. He didn't know her, he didn't know the story, but he knew he couldn't walk away, and before he could stop himself, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. Riley kept her head down as she shoved the last of her belongings back into her backpack. She could still feel the stares burning into her, some pitying, most judgmental. Her throat ached with the effort of not breaking down right there on the floor. If she cried, they'd see her as even weaker. If she stayed silent, maybe they'd let her leave without more damage. She zipped her bag and tried to stand, when a shadow fell over her. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," a calm voice said. Riley stiffened. She didn't recognize the tone, but the firmness in it made the lobby pause. She looked up to see a man in a tailored wool coat, posture clean and confident, the kind of presence that made people step aside rather than question. Elias Mercer looked at the guards first, then at the supervisor. "I was outside. I saw everything through the door." She didn't touch the woman, not once. The guards frowned, caught off guard by his certainty and the unmistakable weight of his appearance. Expensive clothing, clipped speech, a man clearly used to being taken seriously. The supervisor hesitated. "Sir, this is an internal matter." "No," Elias said softly. "This is a wrongful accusation, and you're penalizing her for it." Riley's stomach twisted. She didn't ask for this. She didn't want some rich stranger stepping in like a hero. Help always came with assumptions, strings, or pity. "I don't need," Riley started, but Elias gently raised a hand, not to silence her, but to pause the escalating situation. "She deserves her interview," he continued. "Your applicant followed the rules. Someone else caused the disruption. Don't punish her for another person's lie." Heads in the waiting room turned. Some nodded, some looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke. The supervisor shifted, clearly not wanting a scene. We can reschedule her interview for later today." Elias's gaze sharpened. "She was here on time. She's prepared now. Treat her like anyone else." That landed. Publicly. The supervisor relented with a stiff nod. "Fine, we'll proceed shortly." Riley felt every muscle in her body wind tight. She didn't know whether to thank him or tell him to leave her alone. Her pride stung from being defended in front of so many people. "Why did you do that?" she asked quietly when the supervisor walked away. Elias softened, but not with pity, more with a kind of earnest conviction she didn't expect. "Because what happened wasn't right, and because I recognized your necklace." Riley blinked, confused. "My necklace?" Before she could ask more, the staff called her name. She stepped forward, still shaken, still wary, and Elias stood there watching her, unsure why helping this one stranger suddenly felt so important. Elias didn't make it 3 steps outside the workforce center before his phone buzzed with the one name he least wanted to see. Victor Mercer, his father, chairman of Mercer Innovations, keeper of reputation, gatekeeper of appearances. Elias stared at the screen, already bracing himself before answering. "Why did I just receive a call?" Victor began without greeting, informing me that my son caused a disturbance at a city employment center. Elias exhaled slowly. Of course someone had recognized him. "I didn't cause a disturbance. I stepped in when someone was being humiliated." "A homeless woman," Victor corrected, voice sharp. "That is the headline they're preparing, Elias. Mercer Air interferes in security matter on behalf of a vagrant. Do you have any idea what this does to our image?" Elias felt his jaw lock. "Our image isn't more important than fairness." "That's exactly the kind of thinking that destroys companies," Victor snapped. "You don't get to be careless just because you feel emotional. There are protocols. There are limits to where we involve ourselves." "It wasn't about involving ourselves," Elias replied, struggling to keep his tone even. "It was about not walking away." Victor sighed, the disappointed kind that landed harder than anger. "You cannot attach yourself to people who bring chaos. You have responsibilities. If you want to lead this company one day, you must choose your battles carefully and avoid anything or anyone that looks unstable." Elias's grip tightened on the phone. She wasn't unstable. She was mistreated. "And you chose to make it your problem," Victor said, low and cold. "This is exactly why the board questions your judgment." The words hit a familiar bruise. Elias had spent years trying to be seen as more than a privileged figurehead, but anything that deviated from the polished Mercer image was treated as weakness. Victor continued, "Let the city handle its own people. You stay in your lane. Do you understand me?" Elias didn't answer right away. He could see the reflection of the workforce center's doors in the glass beside him. Inside, Riley Quinn was fighting for a chance at survival, while he was being scolded for simply acknowledging her humanity. When he finally replied, his voice was steady. "I'm not ashamed of what I did." Victor's silence crackled with disapproval. "Then start preparing to clean up the mess you've made." The call ended. Elias lowered the phone, pulse tight, mind heavier than when the day started. And inside the building behind him, Riley stepped out from her interview with hope flickering weakly, unaware that her world and his had already collided in ways neither of them could escape. Riley stepped out of the workforce center with stiff shoulders and a thin sheet of paper confirming her second-round appointment. Nothing guaranteed, nothing stable, just a possibility. It should have felt like progress. Instead, her stomach churned with leftover humiliation and the heavy knowledge that she'd only been heard because someone wealthy stepped in. Elias stood near the curb, as if waiting. Riley slowed, hope tightening into suspicion. She didn't want gratitude forced out of her. She didn't want pity disguised as kindness. "You okay?" Elias asked cautiously. Riley let out a breath that wasn't quite a sigh. "Why are you still here?" He blinked, thrown. "I thought you might want to talk." "About what?" she asked, voice sharper than she meant. "About how I needed someone like you to save me." His expression shifted, not offended, confused. "That's not what I meant." Riley looked away, clutching her backpack straps. "I had it handled." "You were being blamed for something you didn't do," he said gently. "No one was listening to you." "Exactly," Riley snapped. "That's my life. That's every day. And then you show up, say a few words, and suddenly everyone decides I matter." "You know how that feels?" Elias hesitated. "I was trying to help. And I'm supposed to what? Thank you? She shook her head. People don't help without wanting something, or thinking something about me. That's not fair, Elias said quietly. Not everyone who wants to help is trying to look down on you. Riley let the pendant slip into her palm, rubbing its familiar edge. You don't get it. Help from people like you comes with this spotlight. Like I'm supposed to be grateful you even looked at me. That's not what I want, he said, a thread of frustration creeping in. I stepped in because what happened was wrong. That's it. Then why are you still here? Elias opened his mouth, closed it, then exhaled. Because that necklace you're wearing, it means something to me, or it used to. Riley stilled, fingers tightening around the pendant. You don't even know me. No, Elias admitted softly. But maybe that's why I didn't want to just walk away. Riley took a step back. Well, I don't need rescuing. Not today. Not by you. He nodded slowly, accepting the blow even though it clearly stung. Okay, I hear you. Riley turned to leave, heart hammering with anger she couldn't fully explain. Elias watched her go, unsure why the argument felt heavier than it should, and why walking away suddenly felt like the wrong thing to do. Riley didn't expect to see Elias again. Not that day, not ever. She assumed he'd go back to whatever upscale meeting he was headed to and forget about the girl with the necklace. But the city had a way of folding paths together when people least wanted it. 2 days later, she was told to report to a community outreach project as part of her second round evaluation, a trial shift. 1 day of work to prove she could handle responsibility, teamwork, and pressure. Riley showed up early at the refurbished warehouse space downtown, her heart pounding with the need to succeed. What she didn't expect was to walk in and find Elias Mercer standing by a table of volunteer packets, sleeves rolled up, talking to staff members. Her stomach dropped. Of course the program was funded by Mercer Innovations. Of course he was here. Of course, today of all days, they'd be forced to work together. Riley almost turned around. But a coordinator spotted her. Riley Quinn? Great! You'll be paired with Elias for the intake survey project. Her throat went dry. Paired with him? Elias turned at the sound of her voice. A flicker of surprise passed over his face, followed quickly by something gentler. Hi. Riley folded her arms. Is this a joke? No joke, the coordinator said cheerfully. He's one of our lead volunteers, knows the whole system. She thrust a clipboard into Riley's hands. You two will interview incoming clients and organize responses together. Riley shot Elias a warning look, but there was no escape. Within minutes, they were side by side at a folding table, greeting people from shelters, soup kitchens, and transitional centers. Riley recognized the expressions, the mix of fatigue and hope. She knew that look too well. At first, they barely spoke. Elias asked careful questions. Riley wrote down answers. Slowly, though, Riley noticed the way he listened, really listened, to every person who sat in front. He didn't rush them. He didn't judge. He didn't act like someone performing charity for show. When an older man struggled to read a form, Elias didn't take over. He slid it closer and said, "Take your time. We're here as long as you need." Riley's eyes flicked to him despite herself. That wasn't pity. That was respect. During a break, Elias glanced at her clipboard. "You're good at this," he said quietly. Riley shrugged, unsure what to do with the unexpected compliment. "I just know what it's like to be on the other side of the table." He nodded. "Maybe that's why you're the one who should be here, not me." She looked at him then, really looked, past the tailored coat and clean haircut. For the first time, she saw someone trying to break out of a world he never chose. And despite herself, something between them began to soften. By mid-afternoon, the warehouse had quieted. Most clients had completed their intake forms, and volunteers filtered toward the back for coffee and leftover pastries. Riley stayed behind at the table, sorting paperwork into neat stacks. Elias lingered too, though she suspected it wasn't the paperwork keeping him there. Silence stretched between them. Not tense this time, just full of things unspoken. Finally, Elias pulled out a folding chair and sat beside her, elbows on his knees, gaze fixed on the pendant resting against her shirt. "Can I ask about the necklace?" he said carefully. Riley's fingers instinctively brushed it. "Why does everyone keep looking at it like it's important?" Elias took a slow breath. "Because I gave one exactly like it to someone a long time ago. My childhood friend. She meant a lot to me." Riley blinked. "You think I'm her?" "No," he said immediately. "It's not that." He hesitated. "I just haven't seen another one since." Riley leaned back. "It was my mom's. She never told me where it came from, just said it mattered." Something shifted in Elias's expression. Recognition maybe, or a quiet ache. "I guess we both held on to something most people would have thrown away." Riley tilted her head. "What are you holding on to?" For the first time since she met him, Elias seemed unsure. He rubbed his thumb along the edge of the table. "Expectations mostly. A version of the Mercer name I never asked for. My father thinks compassion is a liability, that if I show too much humanity, the board will think I'm weak." Riley frowned. "Sounds exhausting." He let out a humorless laugh. "It is." Riley hesitated, then said quietly, "People think being homeless is just about not having money. But it's more like living inside a box no one lets you step out of. You're either invisible or a problem, never a person." Elias looked at her, and something clicked between them. Not romantic, not dramatic, just a shared recognition of two different prisons built from two different worlds. "You're trapped by expectations," Riley said softly. "And you're trapped by assumptions," Elias replied. They sat with that truth, the weight of it settling gently, instead of crushing them. Riley traced the outline of her pendant. "My mom used to say, we hold our ground, even when nobody sees us. Sometimes I think I hold it too tightly." Elias nodded slowly. "Maybe holding it isn't the problem. Maybe believing you have to hold it alone is." Their eyes met, equal, honest, unguarded. For the first time, both saw the other not as an opposite, but as someone carrying a burden too heavy to name. The final hour of the trial shift brought everyone together for a group debrief. Staff members, volunteers, and program supervisors gathered near the front of the warehouse. Riley stood off to the side, clipboard in hand, hoping to blend in. She'd done well today, better than she expected, but visibility had a way of turning on her. When the program director approached the group, a familiar voice cut sharply through the chatter. It was the same businesswoman from the workforce center, the one who had lied about Riley stealing her wallet. She was here as a corporate partner, smiling tightly as she recognized Riley, and whispered to the people beside her. "I know her," she said loudly. "She caused a scene at the center, nearly stole from me." A ripple of judgment spread through the group. Riley felt herself shrinking inward, until Elias stepped forward, not blocking her, not speaking for her, but clearing space for her voice. "Actually," he said calmly, "that's not what happened." Then he looked to Riley. "Tell them." Riley swallowed hard, lifted her chin, and steadying her breath, spoke the truth, clearly, confidently, without apology. And for the first time in a long time, a room full of strangers listened. That evening, Riley walked back to the same midtown corner where everything had started, the glass doors of the Workforce Center reflecting the soft gold of the setting sun. 2 days ago, she'd stood here feeling invisible, weighed down by shame and a single fragile hope. Today, her trial shift evaluation sat folded in her pocket with one line circled in blue ink, recommended for placement. She exhaled, letting the cold air wash over her. She had held her ground, just like her mother taught her. Footsteps approached from behind. Riley didn't turn. Somehow she already knew. Elias stepped up beside her, not too close, not claiming space, just present. "I heard you did well today," he said quietly. "I did," Riley replied. "They're getting me a slot, part-time to start." Elias smiled, small but genuine. "You earned it." For a moment, neither spoke. The city hummed around them, cars passing, conversations drifting, life moving forward as if giving them permission to breathe again. Riley touched her pendant, feeling its familiar shape. Elias noticed, but this time he didn't ask about it. He didn't need to. The necklace no longer connected them through mystery. It connected them through understanding. "I'm not your responsibility," Riley said softly. "I know," he answered, "but I'm still rooting for you." She nodded. That she could accept. Not rescue, not pity, just respect between two people who'd seen each other clearly for the first time. Riley stepped forward, pushing open the glass door to the Workforce Center. She paused, looking back at Elias. "Thank you," she said, not for saving her, but for seeing her. Elias dipped his head in return, not as a millionaire, not as someone above her, but as someone equal. Then Riley walked inside, the pendant warm against her skin, no longer a reminder of what she'd lost, but of what she'd reclaimed, her voice, her ground, her future. And on that same corner where humiliation once crushed her, hope now stood steady. Sometimes the smallest moments, a lie exposed, a kindness offered, a necklace remembered, can shift the weight we carry in ways we never expect. Riley and Elias walked into each other's lives from opposite sides of a city, yet somehow met in the one place that matters, truth. Their worlds didn't merge, but their understanding did, reminding us that dignity can survive even the harshest streets, and courage can grow in the quietest hearts. If this story made you pause, reflect, or feel something real, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me for the next one.